Now we turn to motion 6B, entitled Rough Sleeping, which is an agenda to be considered by the Council, to be found on the agenda. A briefing note has been circulated and a copy has been printed out on coloured paper and placed on your chairs. Under the new procedures, amendments are debated at the same time as the main motion. Councillor Price has given notice of amendment which is set out in your information pack on page 11 and is seconded by Councillor Ratcliffe. I call on Councillor Vick to move the motion.
Mr. Mayor, can I just indicate a declaration of interest? I'm a trustee of Winter Comfort, one of the homeless charities in the city.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I've tabled this motion because as I go around my ward in the city centre, I see and hear about a lot of incidents of rough sleeping. Representing the city centre, that is what it's like. People have registered through their own eyes what is now matched by the statistics that we can see. The situation has got much worse over the past year, but especially so in the past 2 months. The figures show a 12% rise on an annual basis in Cambridge, and a very particular spike in the month of March, which had the highest average weekly count of the whole year, a 50% increase from that in February. It reached 29 observations in 1 week, versus a weekly average for the whole year of 13. Just to illustrate, in my walks round, last week I found a garage broken into, and inside it a sleeping bag with all the evidence of someone leading a life in there. I talked with many residents in flats who have heard a noise at night, opened their door and found someone sleeping against it outside. And like other members, I've seen the tragic sight of sleeping bags coiled under trees on green open spaces. Importantly, no one who has raised this with me has done so from a personal proprietorial perspective. They've done so from a genuine anxiety for the individuals and a confusion about how they should respond at a practical level. Now, I don't know about residents of other members, but in such circumstances, mine expect the local democratic system to show some practical reflection of their concerns. I've not brought this motion in a spirit of blame, but of a perfectly respectable suggestion that a review of what we do is needed, on which I thought we might all agree. The question my residents are most frequently asking me runs along the lines: Cambridge is an affluent city. We are compassionate people. Is all that can be done being done? Now, no one I have spoken to ignores the successive government policies that are responsible for where we are with this issue. Those governments have typically been trying to achieve something else entirely, from which this rise in rough sleeping has simply become a tragic casualty, whether that's through welfare changes, funding of the health service, or the erosion of social housing, or all three. Not many of the people I've spoken to would support any of those policies, and neither would I. This council is also comprehensively on record, under our leadership and the party opposite, comprehensively on record with its points of disagreement and its lobbying agenda on all of this, going right back to the introduction of the broad market rental area in 2008, which started to produce such a deficit between housing benefits and what can actually be afforded in the city. Everyone I speak to is asking, but what practically can we do here? The statistics tell us an important thing. While rough sleeping has got worse nationwide, there is a significant differential in the figures. Nationally, incidents of rough sleeping increased by 31% this year, but in Cambridge by 12%. Bad enough, of course, but showing that the problem may just be susceptible to being alleviated dependent on the way local approaches are put in place. And in Cambridge, we know we can be proud that this issue has always been given a high priority. A lot of people work very hard on it, whether it's the two levels of local government, the police and the health service, social housing providers, or specialist charities. This motion in no way seeks to minimise that, but it does seek to raise the valid question, the question residents are asking me as the overall climate gets worse. Is just doing the same things we have been doing still the right thing? The questions that occur to me are these. Are all our processes for engagement, hostel allocation and move-on accommodation working as well as they possibly can be? Can local priorities in any of the other public services be flexed to help? Thinking particularly of mental health services and the threshold to get access to them. Can approaches to individuals without recourse to public funds be improved in any way? Are the resources we have in this process, are they in the right places? Should extra resources be considered? And when we know what they would be for, how can we find them?
Can I just interrupt just a second? You're going over your halfway 5 minutes now, so take it off your second minute.
You'll get even with me later on. Yeah. Continue with the question. Can the public help more? What guidance can we provide them with? Thinking of the very useful initiatives of the King Street Housing Society, along with the police. What I would be grateful for, as a result of this motion, is if the Executive Councillor could agree that these and maybe other practical questions, maybe some of those highlighted in the briefing note that we've got, could be looked at in the very near future as a matter of urgency. Now, I regret that the Executive Councillor appears to have treated this motion as some sort of criticism, and has completely missed the purpose and the mood. Sadly, we're looking ahead at a complete elimination of my motion, which I had hoped he would reply to as constructively as it was intended.
Is there a second to this? Mr. Kendall, would you like to speak now?
I reserve my right to later in the debate.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Price, I have a member, I understand.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and I think Councillor Avery will be pleased, and the Chamber might be relieved that I'm going to say a little bit more than a couple of words on this. Not quite my usual speech on housing, but it does include it. Obviously, if Councillor Vick chooses to treat the amendment as not taking his motion seriously, that's a matter for him, because I don't doubt that the Liberal Democrats across the Chamber had some good intentions in that motion, so you could be forgiven for wondering why I'm amending it. Well, I'm afraid it's rather woolly, not particularly helpful, and tries to avoid mentioning the Liberal Democrats' role in the root causes of the increase, not just in rough sleeping, but in all forms of homelessness. I think the issue deserves a debate focused on what the Council is doing now and can do in the future, and also on what needs to change nationally to bring about a real reduction in homelessness. Rough sleeping is for most residents the most visible form of homelessness, and I understand that the Market Ward, the ward that Councillor Vick represents, is the centre of Cambridge, and that is where it is more of an issue than it is in other wards. But not all rough sleepers are without a place to sleep, and some on the streets have an entrenched way of life that is hard to change. But there are also many more who are on the street for a shorter or longer time, because they do not have a roof over their head and fall outside the definition of those whom we have a statutory duty to help at the time of an individual crisis in their lives. Time and again over the last 6 years, the warnings have been ignored that the end result of poorly thought out government policies on housing and welfare and a regime of cuts under the cloak of austerity will mean that people who cannot afford to put food on their table or keep a roof over their heads. Now, these warnings were ignored by the Tories and the Liberal Democrats from 2010 in the coalition government, when they effectively reduced local housing allowance, cut and capped welfare and benefits, introduced the affordable rent programme and slashed grant to build social housing. And it's being ignored by the Tories now in removing housing benefit almost completely from the under 25s and forcing councils to sell their own housing stock. The ending of a private sector tenancy is increasingly given as the main reason for homelessness applications, including in high-priced Cambridge, where landlords make a huge profit on renting out properties. Now, the work our officers do in preventing homelessness is the main reason why there's a difference between the national increase in 31% and the Cambridge increase of around about 12%. It's why Cambridge is holding the line in the face of even greater national figures on homelessness and rough sleeping. But that line is at breaking point. That's why we keep insisting to the government that freedoms to build more social housing and the ability to protect what we already have must be the priority in any discussion that we have about devolution. The rise in rough sleeping, homelessness applications, the pressures on our emergency and temporary accommodation have already prompted a review of our homelessness strategy, which will go before the Housing Scrutiny Committee in June this year. Now, I don't want to preempt the discussion here, but I would like to remind members of the comprehensive answer I gave to Mr. Anthony Carpen last year in this chamber in regard to the many measures that the City Council, the County Council and our partners in the voluntary and charitable sector take to prevent and reduce rough sleeping. And you all, as has been mentioned, have a briefing paper on rough sleeping that was prepared by the Housing Services Manager. To give some context to the debate, nationally some 3,600 people are thought to be sleeping rough every night. And that's according to the government's own figures. An increase of 102% from 2010. Almost 9% of young people aged 16 to 25 are thought to have slept rough for at least a short time. In January 2016, the Charity Crisis put a figure of 275,000 for homelessness cases. Over the previous year across the country, only 54,000 of those were accepted as meeting the tests for acceptance. In writing to the Secretary of State and the two MPs for Cambridge, I will be highlighting, yet again, the need for genuinely affordable housing and asking that the government will do what the government will do to reduce the causes of homelessness and fund our work in tackling those rough sleepers with an entrenched way of life. I will also ask the Secretary of State to consider if the current tests for the statutory duty are working or if they need to be extended given the numbers presenting as homeless.
Just to let you know, Councillor Price, you're gone halfway, just to let you know.
Whoa, I'm rushing through this, aren't I?
You're doing very well now.
Slow down a bit. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
What I'm saying with halfway, you've gone 5 minutes, but it takes off the second there. I think he wants to speak longer. Or shorter in this case.
I think he was hoping I'd go on a bit longer. Now, woo! Yes, ask the Secretary of State to consider if the current tests for statutory duty are working or if they need to be extended given the numbers presenting as homeless, whose applications cannot be accepted under the current rules, but who nonetheless may find themselves without a roof over their heads and on the streets. Like Councillor Vick, although he represents Market Ward, I work in the city centre. I come into work early in the morning. Other shifts I leave at 11 o'clock at night. And he's quite right. There is a visible presence. In the last couple of days I have seen the same person asleep outside Heifers in Trinity Street. And it's it's appalling. That's an individual a tragedy for somebody. But I can assure this council, members opposite, and the general public at large that this council is doing the very, very best it can with the resources it has. As I've said, we are having a review on the whole process, and we will look and see what extra we can do to prevent this scourge. But we cannot do it alone. This is government-led. This is spike, ideological, conservative spike. The attack on social housing and young people is going to lead to more and more homelessness. This is not going to get better until such time as national government changes its ways. Thank you.
Thank you. So Councillor Ratcliffe, I understand you'd like to speak now? So you have 2 minutes and 4 seconds.
I'm going to say I didn't want to spend up time repeating my right. It seems like we'll have the opportunity to anyway. I'll just have a few extra comments. The 12% increase in rough sleeping in the last year is a stark reminder that for all the wealth in our city, there's also great inequality. Even without the statistics in the officer briefing we've been given, it's been clear walking around the city there's been a sizable rise in rough sleeping, nor is it limited to the centre. I'm sure that many councillors like me have had several conversations over the last few months with residents reporting their experiences of finding people sleeping in footwells of their flats and in other areas. I've been listening to the people of Cambridge that even when they're expressing genuine unease about strangers sleeping rough close to their properties, nearly every conversation I've had started with a desire to help people and empathy for the situation they find themselves in. Of course, it's sadly not a surprise that we're seeing this pattern of increased rough sleeping and homelessness here in Cambridge and across the country. An inevitable consequence of the policy of austerity issued by the previous Lib Dem and Tory coalition and enthusiastically expanded by this current government is that as people become more likely to fall into difficulty, the support available to them decreases. The issues faced by people who find themselves homeless are often complex and multiple. Cuts to mental health provision, reduction in benefits and the attempted destruction of social housing all heap extra pressure on those who may not be able to cope with it. Against that background, and with continued cuts to our funding as a council, I'm proud of maintaining, in some cases increasing our support, both directly and through working with partner agencies. The extra posts to process homelessness applications and the funding to the county's chronically excluded adults team is a key part of our approach to dealing with the increased pressure on our service. Community grants to Jimmy's Night Shelter and Minister Comfort, as well as others, provide a level of security for these groups who have invaluable experience in the area. There is a need to look at our provision strategically. I'm glad officers are already working on the Homelessness Strategy Action Plan. I look forward to seeing the outcome of that later in the year. With the continued sound management of the Council's finances, with or without Councillor Owers, who seems to have gone already, and the strategic review and approach to our and with Councillor Price continuing to press the government to change national housing welfare policies that have caused the increase in homelessness and rough sleeping, I'm hopeful and confident we can do our bit to help those.
Thank you. That was nearly spot on. Well done. Councillor Leslie.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I did think the proposal which was originally made was an important one to make, although it would have been nice to see more proposals made within it. But I thank Councillor Rick for bringing this to the Council to debate, because it is clearly important. As a fellow councillor brought forward, the problem of rough sleeping is very visible. The problem of hidden homelessness, who knows? I think we need to keep a very close eye on this problem, which is likely to develop even further without stronger interventions. The work that's being done by the Homelessness Service already does deserve to be given credit. The project to identify empty homes and to support landlords in redeveloping them if they agree to a condition of working with organisations like Jimmy's is very positive. The new single homelessness service, very positive. And the work that the homelessness service has done to implement effectively the Housing First approach to housing shows that we're ahead of the curve in this. I think there is more that we potentially could do. I think more use of empty dwelling management orders to gain access to homes which aren't being used. The shortage of availability of community centres will hopefully be addressed as part of the upcoming review, but it's difficult for organisations who want to provide free meals, for example, to homeless people, to even get space, as shown by Food Cycle, which is now looking for somewhere to base itself out of. The Sharing Prosperity Fund seems to be a great innovation, a great approach, but until we see it really filtering down all the way, helping everyone, I'll believe that when I see it. I'd like to see the target of 10 homelessness people rough sleeping per night to be lowered, because if the council manages to reduce the number of people sleeping on the street to 10, it's not a success, it's still a tragedy.
Yes. Councillor Cantrell like his 3 minutes and 33 seconds.
Not yet.
Was there anyone else?
There are now the speakers.
No, oh, well, no, it's speakers. Oh, there is now. There wasn't before, you see.
Right.
I wasn't going to speak on this, but I'm sitting here feeling rather frustrated by it all. The thing that's really frustrating me is the comment that was made by Councillor Price saying that we're doing our very best. It's clear that our very best actually isn't good enough. And the fact that you've moved what was an amendment that really put the heart of homelessness at the centre of it and blurred it with other issues just shows that you're hiding behind the political rhetoric yet again. My daughter has just returned from university, and the first night she went out, she actually came home and said, "What's happened in Cambridge while I've been away?" What do you mean? And she said that she passed 6 people from the centre of town on her way home into West Chesterton who were sleeping rough. 6 people. So,
Can we just
she's been away, that was over 1 term. So, you know, it is a real problem. Take it seriously. It's not meant as a political. It wasn't. It was presented very much as this is a problem, let's share it. And you've changed the angle.
Councillor Avery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I must say I find the amendment pretty disappointing, to be honest. If you were not political, if you were my daughter, you made pretty much the same comment, and you looked at this, and I agree with Councillor Owers at least once. No, you don't. Just this once before he goes off to be rolled in glitter somewhere. But the language is important, because the language of the original motion talks about what we can do. The language that we now have in the amendment is all about, well, we're doing some stuff, we're welcoming a report. I'm not welcoming a report till I see it. There's going to be some specific initiatives. What are those initiatives? Are they going to be fully funded? It gives our executive council the opportunity to make his usual speech about how all the bad guys are making life impossible for him, but he just can't succeed. He's going to write another letter. Well, fantastic, we've already heard from Councillor Owers that writing a letter is a pointless exercise. He's going to request additional funding, and we heard in Housing Scrutiny Committee that there's no point in requesting additional funding. So I'm for those that say, let's do something that we can do. Let's ask for something that we can do. Let's ask for what can we do now to alleviate the problem, rather than all this guff about let's get a report, let's wait some time, let's see what might happen, let's write some pointless letters.
Councillor Owers.
Right, well, I wasn't speaking on this. But ever since I've been a councillor, the fiction that the Liberal Democrats always like to maintain is that we're not political. We stand for a political party, we stand after a banner of a political party, but things aren't really political. Well, homelessness is political, and you can't, like Renault in Casablanca, who turns around and somebody brings in his winnings from the illegal casino and says, I'm shocked to find gambling going on in my casino. If you hadn't supported things like the bedroom tax when you were in government, we wouldn't have had the foundation kind of policies. It is inherently political. Whenever we get a Tory government, we always see rough sleeping, and when we get a Labour government in, rough sleeping goes down. Rough sleeping fell 50% under the last Labour government. Who is in power in this country is the main factor. Now, you can try and deny that all you want and try and twist it all you like, but it's, as the Liberal Democrats always do on this council, but the reality is that that is the fundamental political, underlying political reality that feeds in, always feeds into homelessness. Now, I've got a practical suggestion to make for reducing homelessness in Cambridge. How about every Lib Dem councillor that owns more than one property gives it up to a homeless person? Because we all know that the landlord class in Cambridge has its political representation in the form of the Liberal Democrats.
Councillor Roberts.
How do you follow that? Abusive and beautiful. Okay, a couple of things. Did I say it was a laughing matter?
No, it's not a laughing matter at all.
Can we get to the approval chair, please?
In relation to my own portfolio, obviously our enforcement teams, the people who go out and lock our open spaces in Cambridge, have seen over the last few years an increase in the amount of tents and rough sleeping. Now, when we do find people in those positions, fortunately some of them are simply just camping, but sadly on other occasions people are genuinely homeless and passing through. What we try to do is improve the way that we deal with people that we come across and improve on our signposting towards local homelessness groups and so on. And so in terms of adding into the field until about 5 minutes ago of the debate about the seriousness of the matter, I would also add in the fact that there's certain things that the government have done, and the previous government, to take a practical one that we have in this city that we can do something about. One of the few things that a homeless person quite often has in him is a pet, as some form of company, and it was a quite ridiculous change in law that came in, which introduced chipping of dogs, which in itself isn't a bad thing. It reduces the amount of cost of finding pets for our dog service and our dog walks and so on. But one of the things that was completely glaringly missed by both parties in the coalition was that homeless people exist in this country and they don't have a house to register their pet to. So as a council, I'm glad to reveal off the back of the campaign, not only by Councillor Saris as the lead councillor for us on homelessness, that we'll be introducing an additional stage in the process now that this is coming from, I think, April the 6th, that we won't be finding homeless people up and down the country for not having a house. Now, in terms of the move that suddenly, it's the cognitive dissonance of the Lib Dems, which I find absolutely astounding. Nationally, for years, they have been married up very closely with their local politics. And in the last 5 years, they've become very disconnected. In Cambridge, they're against a whole range of things that nationally they're in favour of. In the same way that we were locally, as a party, we were against the Iraq War. Nationally, we were in favour. You didn't let us forget about that by going around for years. So what I would say is, if you do cut 40% from a council's budget, if you do cut money in real terms from the NHS, if you do cut money from all of the welfare state, if you do introduce changes to the housing benefits that people receive, if you do introduce continually policies which attack young people, that attack poor people, that attack all the people that essentially don't vote for your party, then you cannot be surprised that people suffer. The point is not to vote in the parties that do that if you care about it. And what I would say is, as far as I'm concerned, the Liberal Democrats have held so many different positions, it's like a ridiculous game of political twister. And the Liberals, as far as I'm concerned, locally, only exist as a machine now to win elections. They have no ideology, because nationally and locally they're so separated now, they have no purpose in the city, and actually they're to the detriment of the city. You'd be better off voting Green, Liberal Democrat.
Thank you very much. Councillor Holland.
I wanted to take issue with Councillor Austin mocking Executive Councillor Price's amendment. I mean, I think I speak for my fellow independent when I say that we welcome Councillor Price's. You may laugh, Councillor Austin, you may all laugh the Lib Dems, but I mean, we'll all be laughing hopefully after the local election. The independents welcome Councillor Price's analysis of the contributing factors to rough sleeping. And when we see rough sleeping on the streets, that is the result of sofa hopping and people, again, returning to Labour, their anti-poverty strategy. There's a class of poverty in this city. There are market rents that are extortionate. And yes, again, Councillor Owers made the point I was going to make. How many people in this room have a second home which they rent out and benefit from, and what is not said about that?
Councillor Cantrell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Having a home is a basic right, and homelessness is political. It's political between those people who have a home and those people who don't have a home. That's the political nature of homelessness. And it's an issue which goes to the heart of our society. We as an authority over 20, 30 years have a strong track record, Mr. Mayor, of intervening. Intervening not on a statutory basis, but intervening because we believe it's morally right to intervene in this city. Because we believe the citizens of this city prioritise that as an issue for we, the council. And over those last 20 or 30 years, we together, with voluntary organisations, those well-known names, Winter Comfort and Jimmy's, have worked together to basically address the issue of homelessness. Now, in my experience at Winter Comfort, homelessness is a very complex issue. And I recognise that members may not be as close to the issue as I am, but actually, by simplifying it into one soundbite, we're doing it in disjustice. We're doing it in disjustice on the basis that homelessness could be because you got divorced, because you had an abusive family, because you were suffering from some abuse, mental illness that has been mentioned, and also in relation to some issue of losing benefits. But as a result of that, Mr. Mayor, you are homeless. And homelessness, as Shelter says, is something that all of us are only 4 steps away in life. 4 steps. And once you're homeless, Mr. Mayor, and let's say you're homeless for 2 months, the average statistic is it takes 9 years to basically get to a stable level of living again. So it's a very complex issue, Mr. Mayor. And I think at the heart of what this motion is trying to say is that we, as an authority, don't have a statutory duty, but we have a moral duty to continually refresh our focus on this issue. We don't only intervene directly in relation to this issue in the city, we act as the glue. We act as the glue for all those other organisations. And it's our obligation, Mr. Mayor, to basically reinvigorate that effort at this time to make sure that those people who I think everybody in this chamber genuinely believes needs to be looked after are held.
Councillor Price.
Right, Councillor Sinner,
Oh, sorry, I didn't know I was giving your name on. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Cross. Okay, look, this document is before us. On the back page it sets out measures that are being undertaken or will be undertaken, including developing a homelessness strategy action plan. If, like me, you speak with officers in the community safety team, you will know the efforts that are being put into this issue, enormous efforts. You would also know that there is a core of people in the city, mainly men, who will not engage with services. They do not want to be rehomed. And all you can do is to work with them and mitigate in whichever way you can. They are entrenched, they are immovable, and to blame either this side of the chamber for that or officers is scurrilous. You should speak to the officers to get the truth here.
Councillor Ashton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it was on the last council meeting where we seemed to be working together on motions, where it was felt that if we could add extra words to strengthen the motion, that would actually be far better than scoring political points. Councillor Gillespie pointed out he welcomed Councillor Vick's motion, as we had welcomed this motion as well, but felt it was lacking in more detail. What our amendment sets out to do is recognise the motion put forward by our colleagues, but actually put some more meat on the bone. And in the past, that's what our colleagues across the chamber have always said. We'll support you if you can see more meat on the board. And what we're doing now, we're putting more meat on the board and we're actually tackling these problems. And as it points out, if they've read the amendment that's going forward, the Council acknowledges the key role that our homelessness service and those we from partners play in preventing or ending rough sleeping by individuals. It then says, rough sleeping is the most visible form of homelessness, and homelessness in all forms has become a significant and increasing pressure on the Council, and one we are determined to continue to prioritise. It's no laughing matter to us. We recognise the seriousness of this, and the Council welcomes the strategic report on homelessness already planned for June housing, along with a homelessness strategy action plan, which will outline specific initiatives to help prevent people sleeping rough. So what we're saying to our colleagues opposite is, we are bringing an amendment that will deal specifically with the question they were asking in their amendment. So please support our amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Pitt.
I'll be brief. I just want to make two responses and two comments. I'll start that sentence again. It's been a long day. Two remarks in response to the last two speakers. The first thing I'll say is I think nearly everyone on this council is well aware, as many of the speakers have made out, of the complicated nature of many of the rough sleepers. The problem is that that entrenched group seems to be being added to. If you look at the statistics, in the last 6 months, there has, or 3 months, depending on which of the statistics you look at, there seems to have been an increase. And those entrenched hard-to-reach people are still there, they still have their complicated needs, and we still need to do all we can and work with them, as many officers, both in the city, the county, the out-military groups and beyond, work together to support them. What we were asking for, and this is kind of a response to Councillor Ashton's point, is some focus on the rough sleepers. The motion was very focused on rough sleepers, and we are concerned that the amendment has lost that focus and is instead looking at an incredibly important issue, and an issue that has definitely got worse in Cambridge as well, homelessness as a whole. The rough sleeping, it seems more urgent at the moment. The rough sleeping seems more urgent in that people on the streets are at great risk. They're the homeless people at most risk. And we were just asking for some focus on that rather than the general homelessness issue. They are both hugely important issues and both need addressing, and I'm pleased to hear that there is a paper coming on that to the June housing report, which I should know if I read before the plan, thinking about it. But thank you very much.
Councillor Price.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Oh, goodness me. What claims to have been started as a motion seeking action apparently has been destroyed by our amendment. Councillor Austin claims that the council doing its very best is clearly not good enough. I hope she's going to let the officers that are working very, 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 very hard in this area know that she doesn't think that they're working hard enough. She accuses me, or us, I don't mind which, us, of political rhetoric, like you've never done anything like that before, like continual Liberal Democrat previously when we were in opposition, delete all and insert motions. This amendment is designed not for me to write another letter. I don't actually write them, surprisingly enough. They get written and I put my signature at the bottom of them, I think, as you very well know. Councillor Avery, are you really that angry and bitter because I didn't elaborate earlier on your question? Because you just decided that it would be appropriate to mock me as the executive councillor rather than deal with the very, very, very real issue that we have here. Now, I accept what Councillor Pitt here says here, that it started about rough sleeping, but rough sleeping is a part of the whole issue. And we can't leave that one thing aside. We have to address homelessness, which includes rough sleeping. This authority, under your administration, did its very, very best for homeless people. It continues to do its very, very best for homeless people. As I said earlier and was mocked for it, I find that level of intolerance staggering, accusing me of political rhetoric. Yes, of course, there is an issue here that is created largely through politics. Not my politics, possibly not yours, although you were clearly the nearest to the current government for 4 years. And had you stood up to a lot more, it was 5 years. Had your party stood up to them a lot more, as has already been said, on issues like the bedroom tax, we just might not be in the position we're in now. I think Councillor Ashton got it pretty much spot on, Mr. Mayor, and I will end soon, because he struck me as somebody that actually read the amendment and not decided that they thought they knew what it meant. I will leave it at there. I mean, I'm fairly certain that we will get this whole thing supported by this council, the whole council, because it is an important issue. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Bigg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On a very narrow basis indeed, I set out with the intention of ensuring that there would be a review of this important matter, important to all members in this council, and an urgent matter. And on that basis, I feel that it has succeeded, because in what Councillor Price has said, there will be a review. It's a review that didn't appear on any forward plan that I have seen, and I am very grateful that that will take place, because it clearly needs to take place for all the reasons that he said, and all the reasons that are sketched out much more fully in the briefing that was supplied to us all. So on that narrow basis, I'm pleased and satisfied that the motion has achieved its objective. And I also would like to say
that report is already coming.
Yeah.
Well, it's not in any forward plan. Not in any forward plan that I've seen.
Were you not on the housing committee?
Point of information you want to say?
I would also like to say that in much of what Councillor Price said, I find myself in full agreement, and I don't particularly want to pick a fight with him about most of what he said. But it seems that there is a tribal response to this when it comes to writing things on paper. And just like when Councillor Simmons stand up, and really I wish someone would blow something between our ears sometimes.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, point, well, I think that's wholly uncalled for.
Cameron-style remark.
When we started off the scene, I did ask respectfully of each other members.
And I expect respect to be given to us, Mr. Mayor. If you don't control it on your side, then I'm afraid you will have what you have.
Out of order. Directly like that in a speech. I've heard one or two comments while I was a trainer, but not directly from a speaker.
Chair speech.
Now, I don't know if you want to apologise to Councillor.
I don't apologise to Mr.
Okay, carry on.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor.
When she says, Mr. Mayor, that the motion is about blaming Labour or the officers, and that is scurrilous, where did that come from? From any contribution on this side of the chamber? Where did it come from? There is some advice, sense of massivism on the other side of this chamber, some desire to have an argument which is not being made. Mr. Mayor, I am satisfied with Councillor Price's answer. There will be a report, there will be a review. I take him as his word, but I will not be voting for this motion if it's amended.
Okay, then now we go to the vote on this. Sorry? Is it about... I think since you've been insulted, I will let it say something.
No, I'll refrain I'll let my colleagues. I'll say one thing only. Clearly the bar by shops arrived at where it was intended.
Thank you. We'll now go to the vote on the amendment. All those in favour, please show. 28. All those against? Can we ask if
we're not voting on the amendment, aren't we? We're not voting on the amended.
On the amendment, yeah.
So is it still...
On the amendment, all those against? You changed your mind. That's not unusual. Yeah. Okay, so now we go to the main motion, original motion. All those in favour of the motion?
As amended.
That's amended.
So that's 28 again.
All those against?
28.
Thank you. Before we go to the next motion, can we sort of all calm down a little bit, otherwise we're going to be here a lot longer than we want to be here.